Thank you for tuning in to another edition of AARP Foundation Experience Corps in your community. Today we have some special guests in our studio. We have Jaelyn Jacunski, who is the Director of Civic Engagement for the School of Art Institute of Chicago. And joining her is Eric, who is a professor at the School of Art Institute in Chicago, and he's in the Objects Design Department, which is a specialty. Thank you all so very much for joining us. It's been quite a challenge getting us here. So to start it all off, tell us about the School of Art in Holman Square and how you got there.
Well, first, thank you so much for having us here today. It's really great to be here. The School of the Art Institute of Chicago is in the Nichols Tower, the original Sears Tower in North Lawndale. And we have a classroom space and a studio for artists in residence.
And you were an artist in residence.
Yes, I was an artist in residence this past summer.
In that same studio? Mm-hmm. Now, what does that mean, an artist in residence?
So artist in residence, specifically in that program, meaning that you're performing art and making art with and for the community. So specifically for my program, I was doing art and design that's specific to that community. So working intergenerationally, doing design work that I felt that was appropriate and wanted by the neighborhood.
Okay, now we talk about art, and there's so many different genres. You mentioned that you do design,
right.
You do sculpture. What is design?
Design? So it's design and sculpture are really closely related. I like to say that design is the more objective and intentional thing. So you kind of decide what you're going to do first. Okay. Then you have to follow through with it. Where sculpture can be a little bit more subjective, where you're able to be a little bit more free and figure out what you want to do with that.
Okay. Well, just so for our viewing audience, my name is Owen, and I'm your host. And I am the volunteer recruiter for the AARP Foundation Experience Program. And what we do with the School of Art Institute of Chicago in Nichols Tower, that historic old Sears Tower, we have a paint and sip every year. And they have been fantastic. They've been gracious. We bring in our volunteers, our folks over 50, and they help them to release their inner artists. So if you have an inner artist in you, then the School of Art Institute in Chicago is the place for you. Now let's get back to what's the mission of what you do in that community?
So we bring artistic resources to the community of North Lawndale, and we invite North Lawndale to take free classes at the tower for a lot of reasons. One, to learn art, express themselves, bring their cultural contributions, and have an opportunity to help them grow and share those contributions. And then we also have a mission to be civically engaged. How do artists and designers and community work together to change and build new ideas with community? How does an artist play a role in society and make change?
Now, I know you guys have this project, this mural piece, right?
We have a handful of murals.
Can you briefly talk about that for our viewing audience? Because I want to do it, just the weather has not been conducive.
Right, right. And we usually do our mural work in the summer, and the murals are youth-led. We work with youth classes and build, so I think we have done 3 murals at this point where kids learn how to spray graffiti and paint mural size outside. And the idea is that thinking of murals as public art for the community, telling community narratives, thinking about composition and narratives, color, scale, size, shape, and how do they express a collective message to make change and inspire their community.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, you mentioned the word graffiti.
Right.
Clarify graffiti versus tagging for our viewing audience, because I know the difference, but I only know the difference because you told me.
Did I tell you?
Yeah.
So graffiti is a style and art form of painting, often using spray paint. It's graffiti is often message-based and expresses a public proclamation. Tagging is an individual using spray to lay claim and say their name or message about themselves.
Oh, so a voice and opinion.
Yeah, or their name, or identity, or their brand, I guess.
Right,
too.
yeah.
Some
Oh,
of
their
it's
brand.
branding.
Self-branding, yeah.
Okay, so it's a form of branding. Is that legal? Is tagging legal? Graffiti's legal, is it?
Depends on if you have, who gives you permission. So if you have permission to go on it, yes. Whether it's graffiti or tagging or any artwork,
Yeah.
it depends on if you have permission for that wall.
So all of that phenomenal stuff right there in Pilsen on 16th Street, it's a whole story.
Right.
I mean, it's just phenomenal. Is that graffiti art?
That, I would say it's a mix of graffiti art and mural work.
Mural work, okay, and mural is just huge
Paintings.
painting.
Right.
Yeah,
On-
storytelling often.
On buildings, things, walls, things of that nature.
Exactly.
You know, and the wall or the building that you have in North Lawndale that you guys do your mural on is where?
So it is a retention wall holding up a no longer used rail line, and it's runs through the heart of Home and Square in North Lawndale off of the old Sears catalog facility. And on top of the wall is a community garden, an urban garden run by the gardeneers. And the wall is a public space that we get permission to use. And we use it to talk to the high schools, the community people driving by.
And that's what makes it legal because you get permission.
We get
Right.
permission, yeah. So we work with the Foundation for Home and Square, and we rent from the Foundation of Home and Square in the Nichols Tower, and they work with the owners of the land and lease out that land, and they give us the permission to create the murals.
Now let's talk a little bit about, this is the Art Institute, the School of Art Institute in Chicago. This big fancy place downtown Michigan Avenue. And now you guys have a satellite office in one of the most historic communities and buildings, Nichols Tower. How did that happen?
So we were invited by Kristen Dean, who at the time was the executive director.
No, Kristen.
You know
Yes.
Kristen Dean, she's
Yes.
wonderful. And they were looking, at the time, the tower was not renovated. It was just still a shell of a building that had been laying fallow for about 25 years.
And this was the historic original Sears Tower.
Right.
Everybody knew about that. In fact, Home and Square was where Sears Towers was based.
Exactly. And for many years, for I think 20 years, they had been building affordable housing. They created a park district and recreation center, a high school, grade schools, re-enlivening this kind of space that was left after the disinvestment of Sears. And the tower was their last effort, their last part of the lots to develop. And so as they were doing community building and organizing to decide what would go in that building, they really knew they wanted it to be services that supported the neighborhood. And some of the services they identified was art and culture. So they started to seek out people they thought and organizations they thought would be able to provide art and culture and education to the neighborhood. So they invited Free Spirit Media, who is one of our partners, who does youth documentary reporting, media literacy, and then they invited us. And we were working at the time, our president was Walter Massey, and he saw this space, and he asked the question to our school and gave a challenge to our school: how are artists influencing Chicago? How are we influencing our lives in Chicago? What are we doing in Chicago as artists? And he thought it would be a great idea that we have a space where we work with community and that we focus all of our energy outside the school to this one area, that we can collaborate and work together so art makes a difference, that we can claim that art is part of the city.
Art is phenomenal. I mean, as an artist, and I tip my hat off to the both of you, because artists in general help the rest of us or remind us of our humanity. I mean, if you look at another world, another planet, another culture, the first thing you look at is what? Their art. You look at their literature, you listen to their music, and it brings us back. Now, since you guys have been in Homeless Square, do you have any success stories? I mean, and why is it important to bring art to a community? But what about any success stories that you could share with us?
I think, well, Eric, I think
Yeah.
it would be cool to talk
Yeah.
about your skateboard project.
Right,
I
so-
think that was a huge success.
Yeah, and we talked about residency. My residency this summer was a residency. It's focused on art and design, but also bringing in skills for youth-based skills. So the idea of making things, right? So North Lawndale was a community that made things. Similar to my neighborhood of Inglewood was a neighborhood who made things. So bringing that back into the community, but making these things that seem like they're kind of like way off, like they're made in a different world. So like a skateboard, like, oh, you like skateboards? Let's make one from scratch.
Now, you had youth as well as seniors making
Yes, yeah.
skateboards. Tell our viewing audience more about that.
Yeah, so the idea is to bring in these skills, these things that we think are so complicated, right? But actually really, really simple once someone kind of explains it to you. So we started making skateboards, but not just making skateboards, right? That was the first thing, like, hey, let's learn how to make a skateboard. But what makes a skateboard special? What makes it valuable? Which is the graphics or the branding, right? So now you're branding a skateboard. Now you're putting your own value into a skateboard. So now, do you want to sell the skateboard? How much is the skateboard worth? Is this skateboard worth $60? Is it worth $300? Because now you've branded it and put your own story behind it.
So that's phenomenal. Now, your inspiration as an artist, or what inspires the both of you to be artists? Because you're an artist in your own right. You
Right.
do sculpture
Right.
and stuff, and I'm beginning to understand what the design is. But what's your inspiration? We'll start with you.
Yeah. When I was growing up, I was really involved in activism, and a lot of times I would be called on to do the banner or do the flyer for the activism. But what I was more interested in was the music, the things you're talking about, the food, the stories people were sharing. And it really inspired me that people coming together around art is our culture, is us. And my art is inspired about bringing people together, getting them to think about who they are as a community. How do we come together to make change? I keep saying make change, or just like how are we acting together? And so right now my work, I often make installation art and public art where people can enter in like a maze and get lost in the work. And the idea is that
Let's
people
call it installation art.
Installation art, and it's like it's large sculptures, and I love this idea of people and their bodies weaving through the forms and pathways that I create in hopes to ask questions about who we are as a people, who we are as a community, as a city, what divides us, what brings us together. You know, when we put up a gate or a fence, who's in, who's out, how does that form? Why does that form that way? I really want us just to come together and be together and ask these questions, and hopefully bring solutions to some of the problems.
Okay. And you, sir, what inspires you?
To tell stories. So one thing you talked about is if, like, say 1,000,000 years from now, aliens come here and see what we have.
Yes.
Another thing we look at is artifacts, right? What artifacts leave it behind? One thing that always inspired me was the Afro pick, right? The Afro pick tells so many stories. It's not just one. It's a small thing, but millions of people have them.
Yes. And how old is that? That's ancient.
But it told a story, right? It told a story of how many people use this one thing. What was their hairstyle? Why is it all black? Why is there a fisted? That one little thing that got distributed and made in mass told a consistent story.
Is that design?
That is design.
Ah, okay.
So a lot of my things I like to make things in multiples for that reason.
Okay. So as we celebrate ourselves, celebrate our culture, our history, we do it in art forms, you know. Now, what's the vision, for the program in that community? Because what I see us doing, my seniors come there and you allow the artists in them to come out. They paint in that space. That space is so inspiring. That building, that historic building, and your art space is just so beautiful. So what's the plan moving forward? What's the plan for what's the vision for the program?
Well, our program is to open space and help people learn different ways to tell their stories. Like you said, so we have senior classes, adult classes that are free in the tower. We usually have them on Saturdays. And then during the evenings after 4, we have after-school programs for youth. And then during the day, we have degree programs. And then through all of that, we have the Artist in Residency project running. And those programs are all to build community around the art, how bringing people together. But it's also, you don't have to go downtown. You don't have to go to a museum. You have it right there on the west side.
You got a full art school right there.
Yes.
So now, look into the camera and tell our viewing audience how to get into the program if they were interested or had a desire.
If you want to take classes, you can sign up on our website, which is saic.edu/Holman Square. And we have a website with our classes on where you can register, and it will say continuing studies or adult classes, youth classes. You can click on the link, and all the classes will be up there, and you can sign your name up, and someone will reach out to you telling you all the details of the class.
And is there an age limit?
There are. We have youth classes, which are 13 to 17, and then adult classes are 17 up to however old you want to be.
Okay.
So we don't have a lot of kids classes right now. But
Okay. Well, if you're just tuning in, you are here with the AARP Foundation Experience Corps in your community. And I am going to ask you, if you have any interest in volunteering, please give us a call at 312-660-8655. And I mean volunteering as a tutor or mentor. We look for folks that are 50 and over to be tutors and mentors in helping kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and third graders in learning to read and being their mentors. And please feel free to give us a call, 312-660-8655. And in our community, we have 7 schools in the North Lawndale community. And you guys provide us such a wonderful space for our volunteers to come in and paint. And once again, we're here with Jaelyn, Jacunski, who is the Director of Civic Engagement for the School of Art Institute in Chicago. And we have Eric Hotchkiss, who is the Design Engineer and Educator, and he is a professor at the School of Art. Now, what do professors do?
Try our best to give what we learned to other students and help them along the way. So I always tell my students that you collectively, you know way more than I do, but collectively we're going to share this information and try to grow into something greater.
You don't try. What you guys doing, you're mentoring, you're guiding, you're inspiring, you're encouraging. And when my folks come who are over 50, who didn't think they could paint or had any artistic skills, you guys encourage them and allow them. So it's not over. We're not dead. It's not over until it's over. And folks over 50 have a whole new way of life. I mean, the first 50 years were given to us. The second 50 years where we know how to sleep, we know how to say no, we know stress kills us, and we know that there's so much more to do. Now, as an artist, you guys look at the world differently. So I'm going to ask you, for your opinion, as an artist, how do you look at the Holman Square community and what this program brings to that community?
well, I think the program is really, it's a dynamic place. It's intergenerational. It's outward facing. I think the difference in the program in the tower is that the art is outward facing versus one artist solitary stuck in their studio. I'm finding that more and more the arts in North Lawndale are called upon to have kind of not therapeutic storytelling where people exchange narratives, tell their stories as a way to share and grow. It's not a private experience, it's a community experience. It's art and how art brings people together. And I think that's different than how it works downtown. I think downtown, you'll take your class, you go to your studio, you do your work, and then you exchange some dialogue after a reading or some instruction. And you've been at the painting sessions and they're alive.
Community
Food,
art.
joy, music,
And you-
painting, and it's alive.
And you're hearing stories. You're hearing people say, "Oh, I didn't think I could do this," or
Right.
"This looks good," or "Well, look at you," and they're sharing this, and it's just such an upward, live feeling. You know, and that's what I really like about the environment
me
that
too.
you guys present. And it's important for our folks to understand that it's never too late. You know.
Absolutely.
Let's say it's also responsive to that community. So an art program in North Lawndale shouldn't look like an arts program downtown, like it shouldn't look like an arts program in South Shore. So it's very responsive to what that community wants, which makes it look entirely different.
Excellent.
North Lawndale is a very lively place, so you have a very lively arts program there with lots of storytelling and lots of community building.
It's an extremely historic community. It's gone through, you know, a lot of changes.
Absolutely.
And I'm very excited to see the changes that it's going through now with the effect and the influence of art. Because you guys have brought art to a community that didn't have art. How could that be?
I think they had art, but they didn't have a place to do it together. I
So
think
didn't
art
have
and culture is there
Okay.
and thriving in homes and with the community. I definitely think it was there. And I think the Art Institute is lucky to be there. I think the Art Institute of Chicago is learning and getting just as much from the way North Lawndale creates their art as we do as we have been doing our art downtown. I think it's a huge resource for both communities to be together and sharing these their different ways of doing things.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to buckle up, fast forward. We're in 2020.
Okay.
Let's go to 2030.
2030.
What's the program doing? Where is it? And how is it changing the community?
All right. Well, I would dream that we have a full-size school and makerspace. Makerspace meaning that there's a ceramic studio, a sculpture lab, that it's actually a great building with lots and lots of resources for all types of learners, all types of people who want to make. I want everybody to know about it and everybody see it as a place they want to be. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you see? Eric?
Something I'm saying now, I'm waiting for it to get its official nickname, right? So I get really
We don't have a
excited when
nickname.
I see kids and adults that say, "Oh, I'm going to the tower," right? Because this is a place I go to. It's the place, right?
Tower,
It's not.
yeah.
So if it just becomes the tower, wherever it becomes, I want it to become a very inclusive and open and free space.
Okay. So what type of support would you need to do that? I mean, naturally you need people who are interested in art and who are willing to share their artistic views and opinions. And that's got to be real personal. Because you're attempting to express what's inside
Yeah.
in a medium, a paint, a sculpture, or a design. Wow, that says a lot.
It does. And I think that's where our teachers are great, right? They start building a safe space, a space where you can build confidence to get to that point. I don't know if some people can touch in and tap in to that way of working right away. And other people, it's a process, and they go through many different roads and pathways to form their creative voice. And hopefully, the spaces we create, the opportunities that we bring forward, the work we share, can build that voice and that confidence to do what you're talking about. And it takes time, and it's a process, and not everybody's going to come with this same skill set, same confidence, same knowledge base, but all of it's respected and built on.
Well, that's what you do as a professor with your students. You encourage that confidence, that emotional and mental support, to have somebody to believe in you, to have somebody to say, you can do it, is powerful and it's wonderful. And for that community to have you all in that space with this genre, in that historic building, the tower, I just think it's so fantastic. And you guys have been wonderful community partners. Our volunteers look forward to coming. Now, tell us, our viewing audience, we've got just a little time left. What's the your contact information again, and what we do collectively with this paint and sip? Just give
Sure.
a little snippet of that.
Well, my name is Jacelyn Jacunski, and you can call me at 312-899-1291. Our website is saic.edu, Holman Square. And the Paint and Sip is a day. We're having it February 8th at the
Yes.
tower. And a painter comes and takes everyone through a composition. There's food and music and just a lot of fun.
Okay, and Eric, how can you be reached? You are the professor.
Yeah, so actually, if you want to reach out, the best way to reach out to me and all our class and all our other professors is at that website, which is saic.edu. /Holman Square. So reach out to me, reach out to all the other professors who are doing great work there, or just stop by 908 South Holman and come see what we're doing. Come check us out.
We're on
Come
the
check
12th
out
floor.
the tower.
The tower.
I love the tower.
Yeah.
My name is O.S. Owen, and I've been your host with the AARP Foundation Experience Corps in your community. I'd be remiss if I did not recognize and acknowledge our super fantastic producer, the Black Butterfly, who makes all this possible. Please, once again, if you have time and you have the need and you want to increase your sense of purpose, come volunteer with us in your community. Until next time, continue to be the best version of yourself, and thank you so much for viewing in AARP Foundation in your community. We'll see you in the community.